Today in our program, we will be taking a look at this and other challenges facing the sector as licenses of 11 distribution companies, discos, and 6 generation companies are due for renewal on the 1st of November 2028. To discuss this further in the studio, we have a guest who seems to combine the names of political gladiators in Nigeria, Dr. Atiku Abubakar Tambuwal. Dr. Tambuwal is an electrical engineer, a former managing director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, and an associate professor at the Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. You're welcome to the studio, Doctor.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how you came about your name. It felt like they cherry-picked from each of the politicians and gave them to you. Yeah. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
It's been 10 years since the privatization, as noted in our introductory remarks, but not so much. The country has not seen so much of development as anticipated. In your own evaluation, what do you think had happened in the last 10 years? Was it a case of overestimation of what the potentials of the power sectors were, or we completely got the privatization wrong? And I'm saying this with regards to recent remarks from the Minister of Power, who was saying that we should have done a commercialization rather than a privatization. I would like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think when you go down the history line on the privatization, when it was conceived, the real reason was for the sector to be more efficient and less expensive. So that's why it was conceived, and the urge for government to divest from services like electricity delivery. So, as you rightly said, the process was really rushed in the sense that we are not yet ripe as a country when you look at the level of our electricity production and distribution. Be that as it may be, that process was initiated in good faith, I believe, by the government, but somehow along the line, as we have seen recently, there are a lot of hiccups, there are a lot of issues which should have been considered before embarking on such privatization. In my own opinion, privatization is one of the best ways to solve issues, particularly on enterprises that belong to government. If you want to make them more efficient, obviously private sector is in the best position to do that.
Okay, if you're saying that it's too early, I know that in 2013, that was not the first time we heard about privatization. This has been, pulling weight since 2007. To be precise, where President Olusegun Obasanjo was there. And then there was an act which recently has been repealed. So could we say that this is early, judging from the fact that we've had this coming and pulling weight till 2013 when it finally happened?
Well, the issue of time, I think, is immaterial. What matters is our preparedness and the situation as at that time to really embark on that.
All right.
I know NEPA, when that idea was started, commercialization was introduced, and then we started unbundling. But along the line, when the privatization model, I think it's an Indian model that was adopted, was done, we should have done it in stages. Let us see how it works. But I think we rushed into doing it holistically. We should have probably started with generation, privatized generation, see how it performs, and then go a step further and pick distribution. Even if you are to take 102 distribution zone as of that time, privatize them, see the performance. Well, I think we rushed and did it in total. And I think this is one of the issues that has led us to where we are here. had it been we started, we would have seen the issues that will arise therefrom, and then we will now come up with mitigation and how to get it perform better. Then we can roll over for the whole sector.
Okay, Doctor, let me concede to your postulations that we rushed it and we probably started too early. But it's been 10 years in this journey. And in these 10 years, every single administration had made effort to loosen the bottlenecks. There had been an attempt to create the independent power project where government sank a lot of money. The CBN came in with some kind of intervention to help with bulk purchase. That has not worked. We have seen the issues with gas because most of the Gencos require gas to power their machines. 80% of that is not happening because of either local issues or distribution networks that we have not been able to fix. Then we have problem of under recovery, energy theft, and all of that. Why has it been impossible having identified all of these issues, to have been able to solve these issues and move forward from some of the legacy problems that we met? Because part of the argument, especially for the investors, were that what they met upon the takeover was worse than the picture that was painted, and they were not allowed the opportunity to inspect these facilities properly, to be able to contextualize the amount of intervention that was needed. And then they came in, they became trapped. They couldn't pay the $780 million that the banks gave them initially, and so couldn't even access fresh funds, to inject into this place. Why are we finding it difficult to resolve these legacy issues and move forward?
Well, in as much as I will agree with you that there has not been proper due diligence on the part of those investors, but I will see that when you venture into any business, you should have the expertise and you should have done your homework to ensure that what you are venturing into is productive for you and you'll be able to fit in and perform according to the rule of the game. So I think that is where we got it wrong. These investors, if you like, are really not in the power business. When they came in, they thought it is just like we have done in telecom sector. It's just to come and take over and start making money. In power sector, it is entirely different. There are a lot of variables which they should have considered before actually acquiring these assets. So to me, the process of acquisition was not properly done because apart from the due diligence that was not done on the part of the investors, even the process of selecting the bids, the preferred bidders was not properly done, and they were not actually evaluated to ensure that they can fit into the business. So I think this is where it was some issues came from, and also the lack of the financial capability of those investors. If you look at, for example, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, where I'm a board director, the reason why government came in to intervene is because the initial investors, when they purchased or when they acquired this company, they got loan from UBA. And this loan, what we have expected actually, because they have foreign counterparts, that there will be inflow of foreign inflow in terms of liquidity to come and procure, but rather they use Nigerian banks to get this money. And even after running the business for some time, they could not even pay off this money that they have taken to purchase these shares. So this is one of the issues that most of the distribution companies faced, and that is why there was this takeover on the part of the government.
Now, speaking about takeovers and looking at the value chains in the power sector now, I love the fact that you talked about, we have myriads of problems and that needs to be solved. Let's take a look at the value chain now as part of the problems. We have the discos, we have the TCN, we have the gas supplier, just like Mr. Sunday just spoke about. Now, the chain in the electricity sector where the gas suppliers will tell you that we are ready to supply gas, but we are being owed, we are not being paid. And then you get to the transmission companies and say, we have a lot of megawatts to give to the discos, but they are not taking. And the discos in their own defense will tell you that, yes, we are the discos, but we want everything to be in power. We want a cost-reflective tariff, which has been a problem, which has compounded to the problems we have in the electricity sector. So is it that we have not had a lot of commercialization in this sector? Is it something that we're doing wrong, that this is not working to solve the power problem we have in the country?
Yeah, in line with what you said, I think there is lack of synergy. The value chain, as you said, each and every sector has a role to play. The most critical, as you said, is the gas issue, where these generation companies has to pay for it. It's not for free. And where do they get the fund to pay for it? It is from the market. And this money is not forthcoming for so many reasons. One, there is lack of cost-reflective tariff. Two, there is inefficiency in the system in terms of ATC and C losses, averagely 50%, which is too bad for any system to operate. So with this, there is no way the money that is being realized as revenue can get back to the generation companies to pay for the gas. And so the gas suppliers are constrained to give it out. So they prefer even to send it, because we have West African gas pipeline, to send it where they can get their money. And another thing which we have been saying is, when the transaction was brokered, these generation companies are forced to pay this gas in dollars. That time, we know how difficult it is. And the money they are realizing is in naira from the market. So this is one of the issues that they are facing on that part. And when you look at the other value chain, transmission company, for example, it needs funds to expand, to maintain. In fact, a lot of expansion has taken place. But I think the maintenance culture is not that good. That's why you are having a lot of issues. I think from 2016, if I'm not wrong, or 17, to 2020 or 21, we have lost more than 15 power transformers, which is quite huge. So you are expanding, government is providing resources for new lines, for new transformers, but you are losing a lot of transformers. So you are going one step forward, two steps backward.
Why is that, though?
Well, like I said, it's lack of maintenance culture and
on the part of the
TCN, and they are not having the required funds. You know, TCN as an entity, in fact, all the power sector after privatization, they don't get money from government for their operations. It's from the market. So since this money is not coming to them, as they also charge for wheeling electricity distribution companies, if distribution companies fail to provide the amount needed by TC and to do this maintenance and operations, there is going to be failure on that.
No, how can we solve that problem now?
The only way we can solve it is by having a very near perfect market, electricity market.
No, but does that mean increasing tariff for the consumers now?
We have increased tariff, I think, 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
And I'm not in support of additional increase in tariff. But you can perform efficiently, based even on this tariff. You can be able to to improve on ATC and C losses if we are up to 70 or 80% efficient, with just 20 or 30% ATC and C losses. The amount of money that will be realized by the market is enough to drive all the process to get generation companies perform, and transmission also to have the willing charges required to do its maintenance and operations.
Let me play the devil advocate at this point. You were the former MD of the Transmission Company of Nigeria. There had been arguments about whether it is still desirable that government controls that arm in this value chain. It does appear that we are seeing pockets of developments in GENCOs, some capital injections in GENCOs and DISCOs. But it is with the transmission that this space seems to be reduced. Do you think for the transmission to get the kind of funding it's looking at and the efficiency that Nigeria is looking forward to, we also need to privatize transmission in Nigeria?
Well, in my own opinion, I think privatizing transmission will only trivialize matters. We have seen what happened in generation, we have seen what happened in distribution. That's enough for us to contend with. So I think it's better for government to continue to hold on to transmission until such a time when we have improved to a level that we have seen the benefit of privatization, that we are efficient in terms of liquidity, everything is going fine, then you go ahead.
Yes, that's the fear of Nigerians.
Yeah.
Are we going to see that level of funding and efficiency with a good government continuing to hold on to the transmission arm of this value chain?
Well, there are a lot of measures that government has taken already in terms of transmission. That, like I said earlier, a lot of investment has been made. I think about 75 billion or $7.5 billion so far has been spent on transmission alone. And there has been a lot of expansion in terms of the lines and the transformers. But like I'm saying, we need to make the system efficient for transmission to have what it takes to maintain this infrastructure. If you are not maintaining it, we will run back to square one. So the reason why I'm advocating that TCN should be maintained is that it is critical for the nation. And by the time you have divested or you have privatized transmission, it means government is not in control of any sector of in the power value chain. And it is dangerous for us. We can't allow private sector to hold on to critical infrastructure, which is strategic in nature, especially for our security as a nation. So transmission is better maintained with the government.
Well, is that the practice globally? Because when you say government does not maintain hold, it still holds 40% of most of the privatized company. And plus, when you're talking about reducing losses, should we be considering a complete tweak in the power infrastructure such that people can, build infrastructures and also build transmission lines, to cater for a set of the whole concept of breaking the grid system rather than maintaining something that has not worked for us for nearly a century?
Yeah, I think when I was in the system, there was a lot of effort made to have the participation of private sector in transmission. Only that the framework has not been properly worked out, but it was in the pipeline. For some reason, it was, not taken further. But if that had happened, we would have private sector also building in transmission infrastructure and getting return for their investment. So transmission, like I said, if properly done in line with even the act, the new act that has been signed, is that it should be splitted into two. Okay. The ISO, which should be responsible for system operation and market operation, and also the transmission service provider, which should be entirely settled with maintenance and expansion of the system. If that is done, I think that will provide a better means of managing the grid. All the system collapse we are having and other issues will be properly managed by the one arm of it, which is independent system operator, which will be settled with that responsibility. So the wire business will be completely different from distribution of electricity to various parts, and as well as collection of the money.
Okay, let's take a look at the statistics now. As of December 2022, Nigeria has a generating capacity of about 22,000 megawatts. And Nigeria, as of 2020, I think you mentioned it briefly, has about 54% electricity access. And despite the nature of this, we are still exporting electricity to neighboring countries like Niger, Benin, and Togo, just to mention a few. Why are we in this epileptic state of power supply in the country and still export electricity to other neighboring countries? And we haven't fixed that. And if you look at it, some of these countries were exporting electricity to have better electricity power supply than Nigeria itself. Why do we have this problem?
Well, I think issue of exporting electricity comes about from the bilateral relationship between Nigeria and those countries, which, for reasons, particularly Niger, as you know, we have River Niger coming from their side, and they have the liberty of damming it, but they hold on so that we give them electricity in exchange. Apart from that, Benin, Togo, too, we have a pact with them to give them some amount of electricity. If you look at the quantity, the percentage we give them, I think it's less than 5% of what we produce, 5 to maximum 10% of what we produce. And this is done in order to maintain the cordial relationship between the countries. And also, when you look at the West African region, we have West African Powerful, which of course, the managing director of TCN is the chairman of that board. And the whole idea is to have a regional interconnectivity, and it's going to help us because in the very near future, in fact, by next year, I believe we should be able to have inflow of electricity back into the country from this West African Powerful. So it is not entirely a bad idea. And again, the electricity we exported, we are getting payment, if not recently because of the some tension. Yes, we are getting 100% of whatever is sent to them.
So can we say that is the reason why our electricity problems still persist in the country?
No, it could not be the reason because, like I said, it's just a mega amount that is being sent. Our problem is lack of proper management of the electricity in terms of sales, in terms of the revenue. So I think we are having issues there. Once we are able to bridge that gap, our metering gap, and all those issues, we should be able to get it right, just like those neighboring countries that we are giving, some electricity. They are utilizing it, and they are getting 100% returns on what we send to them. So that's why.
Okay. Doctor, when we listen to each of the candidates that vied for the last election talk about the problem of electricity, they all had very brilliant ideas about how we can move this sector forward. And for some of them, I will recall, it wasn't so much about injecting new fund as it is about even making the current system work. She's talked about installed capacity of about 22,000 megawatts. And every day the story is around 4,000. And you think that there is a law somewhere that prevents us from adding 1 megawatts on top of that 4,000. The only other thing we hear is the frequency of system collapse. What can we do to even begin to scale up on the part of the installed capacity? What is preventing us from even doubling this 4,000 at the very minimum?
Well, like you rightly said, what we are capable of generating and injecting into the grid is in excess of 14,000 megawatts. I mean, the generators are there, but they cannot be started. The reason, one, is gas constraint. Even there are a lot of, about 3 or 4 NDPHC plants are there idle because they don't have the gas. And secondly, our transmission infrastructure, they said now it's capable of taking 8,000 megawatts. But so far, it has not been tested to that level. So what you are generating, if the system operator allows, is such that the distribution company should take it. Because you cannot just start your generators and then nobody takes it. So when it comes to issue of taking it by the distribution companies, they are hesitant. Why? Because one, that is constraint too on the capacity on their distribution network. But I believe they can be able to pick up to that 8,000 megawatts. What is really the issue is the liquidity, because if they take much, they are supposed to deliver that amount. And most of them, apart from ECO, Ikeja, and to some extent Ibadan or Abuja, they are not paying up to 70% of what they collect. I mean, the amount of
so this cost recovery, is it a function of inefficiency in collection?
Yes.
Or power losses?
Losses and collection. Like I say, ATC and losses, that is technical, that is commercial loss. This commercial loss constitutes over 70%. The technical loss, I believe, is just 30% of that losses. But the commercial loss, energy theft, lack of metering, bypass, and all those things, those attitudinal issues we have as Nigerians, they are the major issues that we are facing. If we are able to meter using these prepaid meters, of course, which a lot is being done to bring them, it requires investment. But I want you to say that even World Bank is putting in money to distribution companies to procure these meters. So we are looking at a situation when even if 70% or 80% of the customers are adequately metered, we'll be able to realize that revenue.
I understand that Nigeria's source of energy is both thermal and hydro. And I've also read that, countries in Africa was able to use alternative source of energy to generate electricity. Countries like Egypt and Morocco top on the list for that. Countries like Morocco will use coal. And, we have renewable source of energy in Nigeria. And I feel like we can tap into these sources of renewable energy. What is the problem, actually? Also, don't forget that in Nigeria, about 40% of households, I'm not sure of the statistics though, but are generating their own energy. So what is the issue around all of this?
Well, I think one of the issues is that the tariff that this renewable energy, for example, solar, will want to get from NEC is on the high side. It's more than the tariff you and me pay. So that's why they found it difficult. I know sometimes back they have signed PPS with about 6 or 7 renewable energy for solar, but it came to a deadlock because they couldn't agree on the tariff. The tariff that is normally applied to this photovoltaics or solar is quite higher. Likewise, the coal. I think there's another investor that wanted to come in, but this is the issue that stopped his coming in that time, because the tariff they require is much, much higher than the approved one by NEC. But that is not the end. If the NEC has allowed that if there is a willing buyer, willing seller, any company or any investor can come in, establish a coal plant or solar, target some industries who are willing to pay at that higher tariff. And then they go and supply and get themselves sorted out. So these are some of the issues that are really causing delays in coming up of this renewable energy and other energy mix like coal. But if NEC will be able to come up with a better PPA and tariff, there are a lot of investors who are willing, and it is an easy and quicker way of getting this electricity problem solved.
I'm not sure Nigerians are ready for any extra cost at this point.
Yeah, the conversation in Nigeria is one that can go on for a long time, considering where we are, the level of energy poverty in the country, and what we need to do quickly, especially in the next decade, to catch up with other advanced countries of the world. We have been speaking with Associate Professor Atiku Abubakar Tambuwa, an electrical engineer and former managing director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, who is currently with the Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto, and a board member of the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. Thank you very much for finding time to be in the studio with us.
Thank you.
We hope that when we come calling next time, you will find time to be with us so that we can take this conversation forward, especially on what we need to do, quick wins, to ramp up generation and distribution in Nigeria. Once again, thank you very much for that.